Segmentation is the first step in true analysis, and we have tons and tons of ways to segment users in Google Analytics. We'll look at each of these in detail throughout this course, but for now I'd like to touch on the types of segments we're going to be looking at, give you a little bit of a preview, and the key idea here is that we're going to stop looking at all of our visitors as one big homogeneous entity, and instead we're going to dive in and compare them and group them so we can better understand them, and that we're better poised to take action and optimize our site and our business. One of the most common differentiators that comes to mind when we think of the different groups of visitors to our site is where they're from geographically. There are plenty of ways for us to break down how different users from different parts of the world interact with our site. Google Analytics allows you to view audience data as a whole at the world view, as we see here, or we can drill down into each country, we can go into each region or state, and go down as far as into the city itself. Traffic channels are another critically important segment that splits users up by channel in which they came. Now, how many conversions came from organic search? How did it compare to traffic that came from social media? We'll also want to segment out our visitors who do certain things on our site. The traffic segment that completes a checkout is certainly different from the traffic segment who came in and immediately hit the back button. And I'd like to know more about what made them have such completely different reactions. One of the ways we can segment is by intent, and the keywords that users type into search engines can give us some insight into that intent. Now, granted, we can't get as much from the organic or free search as we used to, but we still have full access to search advertising and the searches that occur on our own sites, which may be just as interesting. As we examine the events that led up to your arrival on the site, we can compare that to the landing page you hit when you arrive on our site. The combination of those two factors can give us great insight into your motivations, and they can reveal a clue about why the user's visit might be very successful or not, and thus the ability to segment by landing page can be pretty revealing. Even with seemingly small things like the type of browser, that can shed light on the visit itself. After all, what do we know about a large percentage of Safari users? They're on Mac, right? Now, Mac users are certainly a different segment. Apple ran an entire ad campaign focusing on just how different that segment is. But even beyond the operating system, we know that folks took the time to install Firefox or Chrome, or at least savvy enough to do so. They also cared enough about their browsing experience to take the time to customize it versus using just the default that came with the computer. And of course, Safari is not Safari because Safari on a MacBook is very different than Safari on an iPhone, and both are important to analyze. And beyond just this idea of mobile versus desktop, we can get detailed reports that tell us things like the connection speed, the screen resolution, and other segmentation information that's going to help us design sites that are optimal for our user base. And if nothing else, we can simply split the site into two groups: those who reached our goals versus those who didn't. Just as examining successes or failures in any aspect of life is useful, examining successful and unsuccessful visits to our site can give us insight into how we can optimize and improve. Now, if you're split testing your ads, and by the way, if you're not, you should be, then we'll want to understand how the segments that saw one ad performed better than another. These are just a few of your segmentation and sub-segmentation options. The options are really nearly endless, and they're going to depend greatly on what analysis you're performing, and most importantly, the questions you're trying to answer. The main point here is to start thinking in terms of, how do I want to slice up this data? What dimensions do I want to see, and how do I want to segment those? And will I want to segment again after that? Google Analytics helps you answer this with their pre-segmented reports that are laid out in the major tabs that we're going to see, but you also have the ability to create your own segments to break up your data. We're going to go over this in just a bit.